Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're so glad you're here for what I learned from modeling about predators. And I'm so honored and delighted. Dawn, thank you so much for
Mhm.
making time for this very, very important conversation.
Thank you, Karen. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm very, very excited to share with you both your audience and my audience about this very important topic.
Yes. So for my audience, I would love for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background.
Okay, so my name is Dawn Gallagher. I come from a family of 10. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and big Irish Catholic family. We went to church every Sunday. I was a very good Catholic girl. And being from a family of 10, we didn't have a lot of means. So I had not traveled. I was brought up in Catholic schools, but we didn't do a lot of traveling. So one of my passions when I was younger was that I wanted to travel the world. So when I was 17 years old, I was discovered, actually 16, I was discovered into the world of modeling. And at first it was John Casablancas. He's with Elite Modeling Agency at the time. Now we're talking the 80s. At the time, and you know the 80s, nobody had social media. Nobody really understood what was modeling, what was that world like. We looked at covers of magazines. It looked glamorous. It looked interesting. They talked a lot about how much money you make. They talked a lot about the travel. So when I was approached by a photographer, I was just walking down the street, one of those stories. He said, "I think you could be a model." Again, I was in Buffalo, New York. He said, "You'll have to fly to New York. You'll meet John Casablancas." And I told my parents, and we were excited because, again, we didn't know anything about this industry. We just knew that it was an opportunity. So my father said, "You can go for the summer and see how it goes. If it doesn't go well, you'll come back, you'll finish school." I was in high school. I was a junior in high school at the time. "If it goes well, we'll see." So I went to New York for the summer and had some photos taken and things like that. But I wanted to finish my schooling. But I started doing covers of magazines right away. I started working for all the cosmetic companies. And so I decided to stay in New York. I talked my parents into it. I ended up going to like a professional children's school and then worked with my school back in Buffalo, and I ended up graduating. But what I didn't realize, the predators that were in this business. The summer was fine because, a lot of women came in from, and young girls came in from all over. We were just doing testing. But then once I got into the business in a deeper dive, I started realizing how treacherous it was and how it did attract a certain type of, let's say, people and men. So that's kind of how I got into the business. And, I'll tell you a little bit more about, my father, some of the ways he protected me. But that's really how I got my start, was through John Casablancas from the Elite Modeling Agency.
Yeah, one of the things that thank you so much for sharing all that, Don. I really appreciate it. One of the things that you and I have been talking about a lot is how predators are drawn to certain types of
Industry.
institutions. And could you share a little bit about what you learned about that?
Yeah, I believe that predators, they look for the vulnerable. And one of the statistics, I was reading some statistics and data on what attracts predators is teenagers, children, teenagers, and the elderly, for very, very different reasons, of course. But with teenagers, your brain is not fully developed yet. You are really not making the best choices because you haven't had the experiences of life yet. So they know that, and they know how to manipulate you. You're easier to manipulate. And if you're coming from a family, maybe you come from a broken home where you have only your mom or only your dad, or you're in a situation where you have poverty, then you're really targeted, because they know that they can manipulate you and reel you in with promises, money, a modeling job, an acting job, what have you. And so the modeling industry was particularly, and especially, the agents go for women as young as 13, 14, 15, 16. And they were easy to get access to them in Eastern Europe countries. Again, promises to their parents that they were going to live this very glamorous life. And they end up in New York. Basically, they take their passports from them, and they're basically become slaves. They take their money. They always claim, oh, well, we needed it for photography shoots. We need, whatever they're coming up with. So many of these women are stuck. So
they're making them financially dependent, and
financially dependent. Yeah.
their immigration status, everything is dependent on the employer, and even the employer is housing them.
Right.
So they don't have any place to go, and they don't speak the language. And it's a really, really terrible situation.
Terrible.
For these women.
Right.
And I think one of the things we've been talking about is how predators have these certain techniques that they deploy over and over again to manipulate women. And I think also the sexual assault is part of that, right? Because once you've been sexually assaulted, I'll speak as a survivor myself, it reduces your self-esteem. It reduces your ability to speak up and defend yourself. And this is why we wanted to have this conversation, because we're not trying to blame people who are targeted by predators. We're trying to educate and share what are some of the warning signs to look out for, because there is a pattern of behavior that these predators use.
Absolutely. And I believe that no teenager should be in the modeling industry. Absolutely, unequivocally, no way. I would never encourage my teenager, your teenager. They're too young and too immature to really try to navigate, because predators are really good at what they do. They look normal. I mean, they look like normal, everyday people. But narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, psychopaths, you don't know, because they're very good at grooming. They're very good at charming. And most teenagers depend on adults, right? So they don't know. They're young, they're vulnerable, they're naive, especially if they're coming from another country. They don't speak the language, as we talked about. They're dependent on their employer. The employer is setting them up in the apartment. The employer's taking their passport or their immigration status. And so for me, and I'm going to say this, I don't think you should be modeling unless you're 21 plus, because it's too risky to be in this type of institution. And a lot of institutions, like we were talking about earlier, and these predators slip under the radar, whether it's churches, whether it's the Boy Scouts. I was reading all these statistics because the parents think it's a good thing. It's a good institution. So they leave their children with certain people, like whether it's a priest or someone that they're vulnerable with. And what's sad is that the parents don't know. And whether it's a child or a teenager, they're told not to say anything. Nobody should know. They'll be upset with you if you talk about this. So what I want to say to parents, just be very, very careful about who you leave your child with. Really vet them, really get to know them, because as we've seen in many news articles and things that have come out, that these institutions are not always that safe.
Yes, and how the predators collude with each other to protect themselves and to continue harming people, vulnerable people, and to preserve the institution, and to deny anything or suppress anything coming forward that would hold the institution to account.
Absolutely. And we've seen this time and time again. So what we need to do, and I'm speaking to grandmothers, mothers, young women, we need to protect ourselves. And, I'll tell you an interesting story, two interesting stories. When I was working as a model, somebody had told my father, they said, well, I was in New York, brand new, and somebody had called my father and said, do you realize that this agency and this particular agent is known for harassing young women, especially teenagers? And my father was like, really? I had no idea. So my father called him, unbeknownst to me. I had no idea. Now my father's from the west side of Buffalo, Irish Catholic, from a very big family himself. He called John Casablancas, who's this who at the time, he has passed since, very buttoned up European man. And my father called him and he said, I just want you to know, I've heard a lot about your reputation. And if you or your cronies touch my daughter or come near my daughter in any way that is harming her, I will personally come to New York with a baseball bat and break your legs. So, I mean, I heard this story. So I think he was so shocked. So the word kind of got around John and we called it like, these Italian agents and the French agents, who started the agencies because of predatory behavior. Not all, but many of them saw a great opportunity, and so they became agents and started agencies. But so the word got around New York. So I never really had a problem in New York. But I want to tell you a story about when I got to Milano. So, and John, just to finish up the story about John Casablancas, he pulled me aside and he said, your dad called me, and don't worry, you're going to be a great model and everything's going to be fine and whatever. So I got into the industry because I wanted to travel. And I was lucky in the sense that I traveled all over the world and I met some great people and I made some decent money. But that was not always the case. As we're seeing now in the news and what's going on with the Epstein, that was not always the case with other models. But I never did drugs. I never drank. Because I know when you're under the influence, you're vulnerable. So that's the other thing I want to say to young women, whether it's in college campuses or work after work environments or what have you. Never get to the point where you can't protect yourself. So that I feel like is a really, really important to say and to share, because I never touched any of that stuff because I knew if I did, I would be vulnerable. But I want to tell you a story about Milano, and really what I would if it was today and what I should have done in hindsight. So a lot of the models were sent to Europe to do runway or to get what they called tear sheets, where you worked for some of the magazines like Italian Vogue, Italian Bazaar. I was very young. I was probably 17 or 18 at the time. They wanted me to go there to, do a couple of fashion shows. It was during Fashion Week in Milan. So I flew there, my first time ever to Italy. When I got to the hotel, there was about, I'd say 10 to 15 men sitting around the lobby. And I thought, well, that's strange. But when you get that fear comes up a little bit, like, this is really strange. And the way they were looking at me, it was like I was a piece of meat. And I immediately felt fearful, like something. In hindsight, I probably should have left. But I thought, okay, I'm all the way here from Italy, from America. So I'll just do my job, whatever. But I thought it was very strange. So I go to the lobby and I get the keys to my room. They said, no, don't worry. We'll bring your luggage up to your room. I said, fine. I go up to my room. I lock the door. I wasn't in my room 10 minutes. There's a knock on the door. I'm like, who is it? They're like, oh, bellman. So I open the door and this guy jumps, somebody that was sitting in the lobby, jumps and attacks me and, pushes me down on the bed and starts putting his tongue down my throat. And it was so aggressive. And I thought, oh my God, any minute. And I remember I got to think fast. I got to think really fast. I said, any minute, my so-and-so friend is going to be up here. You got to leave the room. Somebody's coming to get me. And he's like, oh, somebody's coming up here. I said, yes. So he's like, oh, okay. So he left. I got very lucky because he could have really hurt me. I immediately was shaking like this. I immediately called my agency and I said, I'm getting out of this hotel. I'm going to go home. I was crying hysterically. They said, okay, we'll just put you in a different hotel. The reason those men were in the lobby because models were coming in and staying at the hotel. So they knew that's where they were going to find young, vulnerable women. So I left that hotel and, I stayed with somebody. I luckily knew somebody in Milano at the time and I was able to stay with them. But what I would have done, I would have, first of all, just said, no, once I saw what was going on in the lobby, I should have said, no, I'll take my luggage up to my room myself. Because the reason why that guy got in, they were paying off the bellman to say, okay, what room is she in? I'm going to go up there. I'm going to so they're all in on it. This is what we were talking about, how they all protect themselves. So it was the hotel lobby, the bellman, the hotel owner, they were all in on, hurting young, vulnerable women. So anyway, so that's why I'm saying, do never let your teenager get into this, to the modeling industry. The acting industry is also has its own issues, but so that from that point on, when that happened, I thought, never again am I going to put myself in a situation where somebody can attack me like that. And because that really scared me. And it could have been a lot worse. And I've heard so many stories from young models saying really terrible things have happened to them with the agents in Europe, especially Milano and Paris. Anybody can look up some of the things that have gone on there. There's been exposés, there's been 60 Minutes on these guys. So what's very important to me and why this conversation is so important is we as women have to know the red flags. We have to know, we have to protect ourselves. And we have to know what does a predator look like? What does it sound like? What are some of the things that they might do to lure us? And that's what I wanted to get into also.
100%. And also one of the things you and I have talked about is listening to yourself, trusting your own intuition. If it
Mhm.
feels too good to be true, if you walk into that hotel lobby and you see all these people staring at you and
Especially
your
a group of men.
yes, and your first instinct is to turn around and walk back out,
Right.
listen to yourself, like trust yourself and your gut, what it is telling you about these situations. But that would be very helpful, Don, if you would share some of the signs to look out for. And I think it was also very helpful how you shared how you handled that situation, having a plan in place of what you will say or do in these situations so that you don't freeze.
Right. If you freeze, so a lot of predators, they're looking for the gazelle with the broken leg. They're looking for
Mm,
people that freeze into fear or freeze into, you know, what is that when they're like, I have to just give in because, I'm too frightened to do anything or scream or let out. So I guess it would be like fight or flight, correct? So for me, when that happened, sometimes you have to think really fast on your feet. I'm like, oh, somebody's coming up any minute, so really you have to leave the room. Because if I would have started to scream, he probably would have held my mouth or probably tried to choke me. I don't know. But sometimes in those situations, we have to think very fast on our feet. We don't want to get into these situations in the first place. And that's why we talked about, some of the red flags, which I have a list right here
yes.
that I
Let's
want to
go.
go over with you. And listen, in the 80s, sexual harassment was alive and well. We thought it was just part of the business at the time, 80s and 90s. But now I think they have a little bit more protections in place. There's the Model Alliance and there's some things, but it's still very hard because it's a freelance job. There is no human resources with this particular industry, and they just consider you a freelancer. So you really have no real rights and no
And you're
protection.
competing.
Mhm.
You're competing against other girls, right? So you want to be the good girl, the non-problematic one, so that you will get work.
Well, the agencies, if you complain too much, they would blackball you from
Mhm.
working. The photographers would blackball you from working with them if they felt like you weren't complying. There's another situation where I was on a trip to, I think it was the Dominican Republic, and it was me and another girl. And when we got there, the photographer made it very clear whoever's going to be nice to me will get the cover and more pages. He made it very he he was crystal clear in his intentions on what he was looking for with us. And we both said, "No way. We're going to go home." We went to the editor and we were crying, and we said, the photographer pulled us aside and said, and she said, absolutely not. She was very protective. She said, "You don't have to do anything. I'll protect you girls. I need to get a job done here. And I'm going to have a talk with him that if he gives us trouble, I'm sending him home and flying someone else down here." So there were people in the industry that were protective, and especially like the women who were professional women, like the work for the magazines, I found very professional, actually.
Mhm.
It was more the agents, the agencies, some of the bookers. Some of the bookers were very protective and very, very kind. Some weren't. Some were in on it, getting
Mhm.
paid off, maybe jealous of the girls. Who knows? But I couldn't believe how some of the bookers were complicit in some of the things that were going on.
Well, and we see that also with Epstein, with the Ghislaine Maxwell, how they use women
Yeah.
to earn the girls' trust and groom them and lure them into this and kind of normalize what's going to happen. And she's your friend, but meanwhile, what is she luring you into? Um,
Absolutely. And someone like a Ghislaine Maxwell from what I heard from the victims, makes everything worse because they trusted this woman. You know, she was British and beautiful, and they saw her as elegant. So it was
Charismatic.
especially charismatic. So it was especially cruel to do that to young, very young. They were high schoolers at public
Oh,
schools,
yes.
playing in a soccer field. She was
Yeah.
luring them from, it's really sad. And she really made sure that they came from very poor backgrounds and disadvantaged, marginalized areas of Florida. Very sad.
And we're so proud and grateful. Thank you, Epstein survivors. Thank you for your courage. You give us so much hope, and we're all calling our senators, calling our Congress people, and urging full disclosure of the Epstein files. But before we go off on that tangent, I
Yeah,
really want you to share what
the red flag.
these yes, red flags to look out for. So, and of course, if anyone wants to ask any questions, we didn't even invite people to just pop a question in the chat if you have something to say. But let's hear, what are some red flag signs to look out for?
Okay. So, number one, excessive flattery or gifts.
Mm.
So typically they will shower the teen with compliments, gifts, or special attention to create dependency, especially if you come from a home, like we talked about, abusive, maybe a single parent, poverty, because again, predators look for particular types. Okay. So, and I mean, everybody's vulnerable. It's not just a particular type. Everybody's vulnerable, but predators will groom you. They'll gain your trust through gifts, through compliments, through flattery. And we have to learn that that's a red flag. That's a huge red flag. If somebody who doesn't know you is flattering you right away, it's a red flag.
Love bombing.
We call it love bombing. Okay, isolation tactics is number two. This is encouraging secrecy. Don't tell anyone, they won't understand. Trying to separate the teens from family, friends, or safe adults. So with the modeling industry in particular, these women are coming from Ukraine, Eastern Bloc countries, and they're separating them from their adults. So they're easy prey. So again, I really encourage anybody listening to this to really, your teenage daughter should not be in doing this for any reason in the world. If you want to do it as an adult, that's a different story. There are some women who are in their 40s and 50s now that have decided to work and do commercial acting, modeling, what have you. That's fine. You're an adult. You can do that. Okay, so the number three is fake opportunities, promises of modeling jobs, fame, money, or travel that seem too good to be true. Again, if it seems too good to be true, it's usually a red flag, because with modeling and acting, it's very hard to break into these types of industries and institutions. So if somebody's promising you that, I would say that's nice, what have you, but I'd have to think about it and separate yourself and get their name and do a Google search on them. See if they're legitimate. See if they've gotten bad reviews, especially an agency. If the agency's got terrible reviews, go on Scam Report and really look into if these people are legit or not, because most of these agencies, so-called are not legit. They're not legitimate. They're scams.
Listen to your intuition and
Yeah.
don't let them stir up self-doubt in you.
Absolutely. Okay. And then we go to overly personal conversations, asking about sexual experiences, body image, or family problems early on. Again, they want to know your background. and to see how vulnerable you are as far as your family background. Do you need money? I was always offered when I got started. I remember, people would say to me, "Oh, are you doing well are you working? Do you need money?" It's like, "No, I'm fine." So again, these promises of fame, promises of movies, whatever it is, red flag, stay away. Okay. Then boundary pushing, testing limits with innocent physical touch that slowly escalates. Again,
That's something I teach in, because I'm a sexual harassment workshop trainer, is that serial sexual harassers will always be testing. Oh, let me see if I can get away with this. Oh, I got away with that. Okay, now let me try this. Let me try this. Like they're trying to see where does the boundary exist. So we need to, if someone says or does something that we find inappropriate, we need to draw the boundary right then and there to tell them, you're not going to get away with that with me.
Absolutely. And there's a boundary you should put up from the beginning that says, because it's also something that a predator can pick up. They can pick up if you're a people pleaser or you're somebody that, is innocent or naive. I always put up this very kind of stoic-y, they used to make fun of me. They'd say, "You're so serious," because it's like, you touch me or come near me and I will hurt you. I will fight back because of that incident that happened to me in Milano. I was always on guard, and I was like, there is a boundary I put up, and if you overstep that boundary, I will kick you right where it hurts. I will gouge your eyes out. I will do whatever it takes, but we're both going down with a fight. Let's just put it that way. I'm just not going to sit here and take this. So it's a very strong boundary you have to put up. Like it's an energy that you put out. Do you know what I'm talking about, Karen?
I know exactly what
very
you're
strong
talking about.
energy. Like, you don't cross this boundary with me. So, and some of them still try, but that's where then you exit you get away from them. So let's see if there's any more here. Digital grooming. Let's talk about digital grooming. Big one. Okay, because especially for today's world. Predators may use DMs, gaming chats, or apps to build trust before in-person contact. They might ask for private photos or to move conversations off the platform. So, in today's world, you have teenagers. I have a teenager. It's treacherous out there. So we have to constantly really have that conversation, that really difficult conversation that the internet is not that safe. Be careful who's following you. Be careful who's DMing you. Be careful, just block anyone that is inappropriate in any way with you. You block them.
And with our boys, they're trying to recruit white boys, they're trying to recruit them into white supremacist Christian nationalism, right? They are very actively trying to reach our boys in these gaming,
rooms,
all of those things. So we have to talk with our boys about that, and talk with our girls about, and I mean, of course, they can sexually groom our boys as well.
Well, that's what I wanted to mention.
Yes.
It's so underreported, the grooming of young boys. Really, I mean, the statistics are just out of control, but because it's underreported, it's shameful. They don't want to talk about it. It's a problem. So that's why I think the whole digital world, whether you're a young boy or a young girl, you got to be very, very careful. So parents, just really make sure you know who they're talking to. If they're chatting too much with somebody, that it seems a little inappropriate, if their mood or their behavior has changed. Because that was one more thing they were saying to look out for, is sudden mood changes in teens. So if you have a teen who is full of anxiety, secrecy, withdrawing, or drastic changes in behavior or appearance. So that's another thing to look out for as well.
Thank you so much, Dawn. This has been so helpful. How can people keep in touch with you? Where can they find you?
So my YouTube channel, which is Dawn Gallagher. So just go on YouTube, you can find me. I talk about beauty over 50. So most of my channel is, and I also try to mentor young women as well, that beauty is ageless, that we can thrive in at any age. We're not milk cartons with a stamp of expiration date on our head or our arms, that we should be living our best life no matter what. And so my channel is all about beauty and wellness. And one more thing that I want to say, this is a mental health crisis, this whole predatory behavior, it's global, and it's a crisis. It's really affecting the mental health of so many people. So I think it's important that we have these conversations, that we come together in sisterhood, no matter the background, no matter the political affiliation, it doesn't matter. We need to know what's going on, the signs to look out for, to educate ourselves, and then how to prevent anything from happening.
And we need to hold the people to account for the harm that they have caused,
Yeah.
and transform these institutions that allow the harm to perpetuate.
Yeah.
And shield these people. I will never forget with the gymnasts, they had complained to the FBI that Larry Nassar was molesting them.
Mm-hmm.
And the FBI agent was trying to get a job with the gymnastics club,
Yeah.
as security after he retired. And so he just ignored it in
Yeah.
his own self-interest. And if it weren't for the Indianapolis, I think it's Star Tribune, listening to the girls and bringing that story to light, I mean, so this is so important, folks. If you are being targeted, the blame is not on you. It's not your fault. It is not your fault that this happened to you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We love you. We see you. Come forward. There's resources. The Me Too website is wonderful for this. And let's all come together. Let's unite across difference of age, of generation, of class, of
Mm-hmm.
political affiliation, as you were saying, all of us. And let's prevent this from happening, because I know myself, my the person who raped me when I was 16, that has impacted me throughout my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I have done a lot of healing and everything, but I just don't want anyone else
Right.
to have to go through that. And I'm so grateful to you, Dawn, for coming and sharing your wisdom about this. I hope that people follow you. If people are interested in Interracial Sisterhood Coalition, that's also my YouTube channel is Interracial Sisterhood Coalition. You can connect with me there. And also I have a membership community off social media where we can have these types of conversations and really help other women and build community. And that's what it's going to take. We live in a patriarchal society. I really highly recommend the book Erased: What American Patriarchy Has Hidden from Us by Anna Malika Tubbs. And she says that, because the patriarchy is so rigid, it's actually quite brittle and it's easy to break. We just all got to see what it is, and then we can break it, and we can create a society where everyone can thrive. And I believe it's in sharing our wisdom across difference. That's how we put a crack in the patriarchy.
Yes. Well said.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. And also, my website is dawngallagher.com. Please check that out. I have weekly newsletters. Please sign up. And thank you, Karen, for interviewing me and letting me just tell a little bit of my story. And we'll do more of these.
Yes, to be continued.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.